Hello there, and welcome to another day of the Road to 2000 Rapid Series, 2000 and beyond, I should say, here on chess.com. And yeah, we're playing with the black pieces here against somebody from Albania. Very cool, okay. And I'm just taking the center here, like these openings that the don't directly contend for the center with pawns. I just try to develop. I don't know theory here, in all honesty, so I'm gonna just try to develop in a principled manner. I'm gonna put pieces towards the center of the board. I think here I can get away with playing bishop c5 or something of that manner, and trying to have an eye on this f2 pawn because takes is not a serious consideration here. If they go here now, then there becomes the possibility of going after this bishop. I don't seriously see anything. I think I can just castle. So I'll do that. The point being that if pawn takes, bishop takes, obviously I would not be able to take with the knight. Now, usually when a4 is played, the idea is to try to go like b4, a5. You can easily shut this down with the move a5 yourself, and that's what I will go for here. So now if takes, it's simply takes. A bishop takes on b4, not hanging anything. I'll put the queen on e7 probably, so I can go for this e4 move when the time is right. Could also go rook e8, which seems very natural. I'll go queen e7 simply because it also defends the bishop, so I have to worry about less in the position overall. The only issue is that this pawn loses a defender, but my knight's there, and I don't see it ever really going away. I'll put the rook on e8 afterwards, most likely, and we'll get a fine position. Maybe I'll go bishop f5 first, knight here. I can probably just draw back, take with the pawn, open up my rook. So let's consider doing that, perhaps. And I'm essentially just putting pieces in squares where there are long-term targets. Nothing direct inherently, and this was what we saw, so I'm going to take with the pawn here. If knight takes, this is fine, because it's what I want. You know, this is not always what you want necessarily, but in this position, it's what I'm playing for. And so this is fine by me completely. Here, if I can go directly up. I assume bishop takes is a problem because takes, and then afterwards, well, it's not that bad. I do lose the pawn on c6 at the end of all that. So maybe I'll just go with e4. e4, pawn takes. e4, there's four defenders of the square. I don't have enough, so maybe I'll just bring a rook in to e8 or something. Just to get this ready, keep everything kind of in the game. I've moved every piece now, which is nice. Essentially every piece on the board. We'll take here. I didn't think too hard about this one. I think just taking is generally good. In a position like this, I can reroute the bishop to maybe e6. I'm going to try to play for queen e2 ideas, maybe. Notice that their dark squared bishop currently is doing very little in the position. Queen e2 now is no longer as appealing. Perhaps I can try to. Well, note that an interesting thing that I'm looking at right now is that this knight is only defended by this bishop. So perhaps I could try to find a way to distract the bishop, or deflect the bishop, I should say. Let's just get the knight onto a really nice square here on e4. I think this is a very natural looking square. It's a little bit, it's not exactly an outpost because it can eventually get kicked out with f3. But I'm just activating my pieces. I'm creating long-term pressure on this pawn on f2, which can be fruitful in the long run. I should pay a little bit of attention about where this bishop could go, like ideas of hitting my pieces, for example. I don't see anything concrete just yet, so that's not a problem. Okay. Now, what are we trying to accomplish in the position? I should note that I don't have the most time in the world here. Let's play queen f7, just solidifying this pawn. I'm going to try to get my knight in, play c6, keep a rock-solid pawn structure as well. I think that this type of move doesn't ever hurt. There's the possibility of c4 being played at the right time. and dislodging my knight from the d5 support that is present. Now here, I wonder if there's ever sacrifices. I'm not too sure. I don't think it really makes sense to do because the rook is on the same file. So let's stick with the plan of getting the knight involved somehow. So the knight is going to jump to e7 and then to f5. That's my current plan. And it's going to hit this bishop, which is a little bit of a hindrance as things currently stand. This move also lets me play a move like c6, which I think would be good to play. And obviously you shouldn't rush take. You're going to lose a piece if you do stuff like that. So let's play c6, which is what I had planned. I think that makes sense. I should note that I don't love my position. If I put the bishop, I'll put the bishop all the way on b8. If I put it on c7, it blocks my queen from defending this pawn in the long run, which I don't love. Okay. Now, I think knight f5 makes sense. Threatening to take and open up the white king. Now, I assume I expect them to take first. I think that's what would make sense. Okay, instead, this is what happens, which is fine. So knight takes, pawn takes, the rook's looking at the king, at the queen, sorry, I should say. But I don't think that's a serious problem. I also see that there's the possibility of sacrifices now that is a little bit more concrete because the king has very limited room, breathing room here. So takes, for example, bishop takes, for example, knight takes, and all of a sudden the king's in a little bit of danger, but it's too many sacrifices without anything really concrete. I'm going to just take the bishop. I'll grab the bishop here, and my logic is that after pawn takes, there's no direct sort of way to go after my queen immediately. And instead of allowing that to happen, I'm just going to go like queen e7, create pressure against this pawn in the long run. That's the idea. I wonder also if I could have maybe gone queen c7 and then played like knight takes, queen takes, and that creates a little bit of a long-term idea here. I mean, maybe now that they've played the rook move, I might do something like that. I don't see anything immediately here either. Let's try this. Let's try this. I don't think I'll actually go through with it, but there are mating ideas that are truly present here. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and then you're threatening to sack the rook and then play queen h2 mate. Now there probably is a defense, I would imagine. Like this feels like it takes too long simply in terms of the amount of time and moves needed in order to actually deliver the mating idea. But the threat is very strong. And sometimes when the threat is present, it doesn't matter if the threat is stronger than the execution. The threat itself can cause some serious problems to the opponent, especially because the position's a little cramped for white. I mean, if you look at this position, it's a little hard to understand how exactly you're supposed to maneuver all your pieces. I don't see a natural path forward here. So let's consider a little bit. Okay, so this move makes a lot of sense. Now after knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, the idea is probably to... What is the idea? You can't really move the bishop. I kind of want to go for this. I want to go for this because I don't really... Oh, maybe knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, the idea is queen here. That makes sense. That makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, that doesn't make sense. Because I have rook takes anyways. And then queen takes, rook takes. Ooh, that would be cool if that's what happens. All right, let's play it. I'm down on time. I'm playing this move. It's a scary looking move. And the point is that after queen takes, rook takes, the queen can't take because of mate. Oh, wait, it's not mate. It's not mate. Ah, I messed up. Oh, this is not something I considered seriously. This feels wrong. This feels wrong for a couple of reasons. Maybe I could consider going rook takes first, which would be a little insane. In which case, rook takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, queen here, mate. Rook takes first with check, rook check or queen check trades off the... Actually, no, sorry. Yeah, no. That would trade off the queens, and this would be GG's. I think the easiest thing to do is go bishop takes, because I'm threatening checkmate. Okay, we'll take back with the rook here. And we can probably just take back the pawn with the queen, and now we are back to equal material, although I just have way more pawns. My opponent has a bishop as compensation. So this is an interesting position to be in. So here, I probably want to keep the rook on the board. I'm going to threaten this pawn here. If the rook tries to defend, I will go d4. Very natural looking move. This is going to, at the very least, win me a pawn, which is very nice. I'm also threatening d3, which would be a very strong move here, actually. So my opponent's probably going to move their king somewhere. Okay, that also works. We can give a check and take on b2. And look at how the position is immediately collapsing. I should be very careful. I should probably be very careful because of the fact that... Hold on, can I just go here? Check, takes, pawn takes. No, I'm not winning. Because of the fact that this check is dangerous. And then going on to f7. That's very dangerous. So yeah, I gotta watch out here. Takes, pawn takes, rook here. And I don't think I'm winning that. If I take this check, is it really that big of a problem? Yes, it is. I just lose, I think. So I have to stop that check. Let me... I can't see any way other than queen c5 to stop the check, unfortunately. It's not the move I want to be making, but it feels necessary in this position. So now the plan changes a little bit, right? My king is not safe. I have to play something like h6. And I'm down to 2 minutes on the clock. Okay, so this game is actually one where we're getting something a little bit more competitive in nature. Perhaps now I can threaten to take. Maybe I'll go rook d8 first. All right. This feels like a mistake by my opponent. I'm not sure, but it feels wrong because you just don't have enough pawns. If we trade the rooks off, sure, you have a bishop, but I just don't believe that the bishop is going to be enough to actually convert a win here. Maybe it's a draw. That's possible, but look at my pawns. They're so strong. You are never breaking through here. I'm going to just play c5, b6. These pawns are safe forever because your king's never breaking in here. And I'm going to start pushing mine. I'm going to start pushing mine. And it's going to be really hard to stop my pawns. Really hard to stop my pawns. We can maybe play h6, g5. I didn't want to play something like... All right, let's go here. We're moving up. There's no way to stop that. The second you bring your king over, I'm going to come over these after these pawns. Go. Going here. If you try to defend this pawn, I'm taking... Okay. And you just simply cannot stop me from promoting this pawn. And this is why you have to understand the priorities of the endgame. My queen's going to e7. You cannot. Yeah, if you try to defend, sure, I can sacrifice my G pawn, but why do I have to do that? I'll just win your bishop first. This is game. Wow, very very nice game. This game compared to the previous games that I've played so far since restarting this YouTube series, this game has by far been the most challenging game. So kudos to my opponent. I just have to make sure not to stalemate here. So, the game's not over until it's over. Just got to make sure you don't you don't rush when you're making your moves, because it's important to make sure that your opponent doesn't have any way out here. So here, my opponent can still move to d5. I see that, so I'm playing this move, and we're going to get checkmate in a few moves here. There you go. Wow, really good game. Really good game. We'll take a look at the review. I don't know whether I played very well or not, so that's why we analyze. Let's take a look. Well, this was an interesting game. We had g3 to start the game. And I don't know if there's a proper name for this. Chess.com calls it the King's Fianchetto opening. But anyways, we just play e5, d5 since we can, play knight f6. Essentially just regular, normal, classical development. And here my opponent is clearly going for some sort of setup that they're familiar with. One of the reasons why you might want to consider playing these g3 or b3 moves early on is because no matter what black does, you can almost always follow it in a similar manner. So, fianchettoing a bishop, playing pawn moves that only go one step forward so that there's no tension between the pawns, and you pretty much always get the setup that you want. So even though I don't know the name of this particular setup, there is credence to the fact that playing like this is, a viable option, because you get positions you're familiar with and comfortable with, while your opponent oftentimes doesn't really know the path forward, which was the case for me in this game. So even though black, according to the engine, is a little bit better out of the opening, I don't think this is bad play from white by any means. So you see, the idea is to get the queen on c2. Here already, apparently, I had a strong move, knight g4, and this is very typical of openings where you have a bishop that eyes the f pawn, that you also want to add an extra attacker to the f pawn. So you see it in like scholars mate examples where the queen is the additional attacker, but more commonly in like the fried liver, for example, the knight and bishop work together to go after a weak pawn near the king. And here, my opponent would probably have had to play d4. Here, e3 looks like the most natural option, but after e3, there's bishop takes on e3. Because after f takes back, knight takes on e3. This queen has only one square that doesn't lose the queen, and you lose your bishop. It's crazy stuff. It's actually really cool. The king goes to f2, and now the argument is that after knight h4, you probably have to take, and this completely opens up your king. You're losing this game. There's no coming back from this against a strong player. And this is some really cool stuff, and it's not something I really paid attention to. So obviously, if you are able to sit down and think about it for a while, you see the sacrifice on e3 that's possible. You have to play d4 here instead. But this we saw. Like this I noticed, and I said I wasn't worried about it because I said that I could just take back, and if they take again, I take with the bishop. You can't take with the knight because your bishop would be hanging. And I figured this would be fine. And I'm curious if e3 you have the same idea, and you actually kind of do. The only difference is that now the queen can actually get away because there are squares on the c file that are open, or maybe even, for example, on these diagonals. Before, the queen was more closed. If you look at this d pawn, that's stopping the queen from getting away. So interesting stuff. And we don't get all that. Like, I just decide to play quickly. I castle. This is normal chess. Here already, there's a moment where I could have gone knight g4 again. Apparently, I could have also started with bishop takes on f2, which is always very cool. And this type of play is common whenever you can coordinate a jump check with your knight and bring your queen into the attack as well. So that's going to be the idea here. If the king goes just simply back to f1, they're straight up going to lose the game. Oh, wow, it's actually not because of queen f6 check. It's because of knight e3 check in this case. The king and queen can be forked. Well, let's say the king goes to e1. Oh, and I'm still wrong. Okay, never mind. I stand corrected. Queen f6 is not the idea. The idea is still 93. The point being that the queen is going to be forced to move to another square, and wherever the queen goes, you can win the bishop. So the idea was essentially the same. Understanding that this bishop and this queen are unforkable squares. Now, I didn't do that. What I did was fairly straightforward. I was worried about the possibility of b4, and if I want to keep my bishop on this diagonal, it would be a mistake because I would get my bishop trapped. If bishop b6 after b4, then there would be a5, and my bishop would have no squares, and I would have to lose my bishop. So for that reason, I went a5. a5 is not the best move. It's still a good move. Like, yes, there's an X on that. It says it's a mistake. It's only a mistake because I missed a tactical chance to win material with the attack on f2. But since I didn't see that, a5 was the next best option. So I'm not mad about this. Knight g f3 is played here. I play queen e7, which is the best move here. And I'm trying to play for e4. But I decided not to do it right away. I decided to prepare the move with bishop f5. And unfortunately, I misevaluated the importance of keeping control of the light squares during this game. So I thought, oh, I don't mind this because then I can open up my rook for an attack. But losing control of the light squares is actually pretty bad for me in this situation because my opponent will have complete domination of light squares. Here you can already play queen b3, which targets two pawns, and there's no way for me to keep both of them. So I already straight up I'm down a pawn, and you see that white is plus 1.5 according to the engine in this position. So that's something for me to be wary of the ideas that are present when you lose control of a certain color complex on the board. Now, my opponent didn't see this. They instead just played e3. I assume they're still continuing with their setup at this point. I decided to bring my rook in so that I can move my queen away. That was my idea, was to move my queen to a different square, which I do eventually. Here, after knight f3, the engine doesn't like knight e4, and the reason is, once again, queen b3. Queen b3 again is a fork, and there's no good way to keep both pawns. But opponent doesn't see it, so I got pretty lucky in this game, to be honest. Now that I think about it, I got pretty lucky. Queen b5 here also looks very natural, hitting the pawn on b7, and if you try to defend it somehow, like let's say push up, well, the knight's hanging. So you have to, after queen b5, you probably have to defend with rook b8, and this kind of wastes the move that you made previously. And then there's long-term pressure with this bishop on this diagonal. So my opponent still doesn't see it, decides to develop a piece. So I got quite a bit lucky actually in this game. Now here, very important to note, you cannot take this pawn. If you take this pawn, you lose a knight. All right, this goes out to more of the beginner or lower intermediate players out there. It's really important to understand what the dynamic is between the pieces that are on the board at any given time, because that dynamic will change. So c4 is essentially an offer by my opponent to exchange pawns. But as soon as these pawns are exchanged, the dynamic changes. This knight is no longer defended. You lose the knight. So it's really important to understand the interaction between the different pieces on the board. So here I just play c6 to keep a defense of it. My opponent overextends here with c5. This lets me bring my bishop all the way back. Apparently bishop c7. Whoa, sorry. So apparently bishop c7 was better, and I didn't like bishop c7 because I didn't like how this pawn was going to be a little hard to defend. But there's no way to really get after the pawn now. Right? There's really no easy way to get after the pawn. Also, bishop c7 protects this pawn on a5, which is probably the harder pawn to defend because you don't want to bring the rook back onto a8. So for that reason, bishop c7 was probably better. I played bishop b8. I just decided to bring it all the way back. The logic is a little flawed. It's very flawed, actually, but it's a psychological thing. Like, it's very easy to forget about these bishops that are working all the way from the back rank. So that was kind of what I had in mind, and it proved to be sort of fruitful here. Knight f5 was what my move. I was happy with the trade of knights. My opponent didn't want to trade the knights, and they should have, because now I can take the bishop and I move the queen out of the way. I don't know why this is an accuracy. I think queen e7 was the best move. Yeah, queen e7 was the best move. And my opponent sees that I have eyes on this pawn on e3, so they preemptively defend. And here I played queen d7 Apparently, it's a mistake because they like the idea of going h5, h4, that sort of thing. Um, and I don't think that queen c7 is a mistake because the idea is the same. I'm going after this pawn, and here I play a brilliant move. Oh, I played a brilliant. Okay, knight takes on g3 is a brilliant move. I had a feeling this was sound, but I didn't know whether or not it was punishable. Apparently, it wasn't punishable. This is just a good move. And the point is here, you have to trade the rooks first. After, for example, the rook takes back. Now you play bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. You're eyeing this pawn here. Let's say they defend. And now you're going to play g5, g4. Kick out the rook from defending the pawn. Win this pawn. So interesting stuff. I went for something fairly similar. I played bishop takes first. They traded the rooks. That's the big difference. They got to trade the rooks so that I don't have the direct attack on this e3 pawn afterwards. But I still win the pawn back. And here I play rook e8, so I want to keep the rooks on the board. If I had traded the rooks, it probably would still be drawing. But there's a little bit less winning chances if you have less pieces on the board. I decided to go for a little bit more chaos here. And this is a mistake. Okay, d4, I played pretty fast, I think. Yeah, I played it in 2 seconds. It's a mistake, and this is a silly mistake, but it's so important. That's something I say all the time, and I gotta practice what I preach. But you always have to consider what your opponent's gonna do in the position. The reason why this is a mistake is because it allows queen c4 check. The king goes to h8. Now, maybe all of a sudden, well, first of all, they can just win the pawn. You can just win the pawn, but second of all, I believe queen f7 is a problem. Here it's a draw because h6, you have time to play this move because now the rook is protected by your queen. But point being, I gotta pay attention. I gotta pay attention. I didn't pay attention. The whole point is they can just win my pawn. And when this happens, this is pretty much game over here because I don't have any real threat at a passer as long as the king stays on this side of the board. So, yeah. Instead, we get e4. I get to take a pawn. My opponent stops me from playing a discovered check. I give a check, and then here I was thinking, well, now I can probably just take this pawn on b2. You see that the engine says I can, but I'll tell you why I didn't. I was very worried about queen c4 check, king h8, queen f7. I was really worried about this. I didn't really see a way out, and this is on me. I didn't find rook g8. Rook g8 is a pretty clear defensive idea. Now note that this is not over, because now bishop h3, bishop e6 is coming. So I have to be super duper accurate in defending. I only have 2 moves that pull it off. One of them being queen a3, sorry, covering the f8 square. One of them being queen b4, also covering the f8 square. So let's say I play queen b4. Let's say the bishop still goes to e6. Now I can play rook a8 because now my queen is covering the back rank mating ideas. So it would have been tricky, and this is why I didn't take the pawn. Instead, what I did was I just covered the check. Just covered the check. What I missed is that my opponent still has the check, which is kind of funny that I missed that. But my opponent missed it too. They played b3. And here, I just reorient the rook, keep my pawn safe, and they trade the queens. And I thought this was wrong. I thought this was wrong because I thought that now, if I ever trade off the rooks, which is going to happen, there's no other way to win this pawn. I figured that I had so many pawns in the position, it would be really hard to defend with just one bishop. Now, theoretically, this is a draw. Theoretically, this is still a draw. And probably, I think I made mistakes, and I think it might have been winning at one point for white. But I just figured this is so hard to play with white. Like, my pawns are all on dark squares on this side of the board, so your bishop's never going to be able to get to them. As long as my king stays on e5, I just don't see how I lose the game, because this king is never going to be able to get in. I just play king f6, king e5. So I have a draw guaranteed if I want it, essentially. I essentially have a draw guaranteed if I want it, because there's just no path. There's no path for the king to break through. Like, this is covered by the C and B pawns. So the B4 square is not possible to infiltrate through, and the D4 square is not possible to infiltrate through because of the C5 pawn, and these pawns work together to blockade any and all opportunities for the king to get in. But the problem is I decided to get a little too ambitious, and I decided, hey, I think I might be winning here. I'm going to push these pawns. How are you going to stop me? And here, what I missed is that by playing h5, allows bishop g6, and now even if I play h4, the issue is done. It's a sealed deal here, because now the king will forever have an entryway into my position, and then I won't be able to keep my eye on all these pawns in the long run, because the bishop is going to stop my king from being able to access these squares to defend these pawns. So that's the issue. Thankfully, my opponent missed it and was trying to play fast because I was low on the clock. I play g4 here. My opponent's king goes to g3. I decide to go after these pawns. And my opponent should have played probably... Oh, I thought it was bishop e6. Apparently, they should have played bishop g6. Apparently, they should have won all these pawns, and then the bishop and king would have been enough to stop my pawns. That's apparently the key idea. Now, my opponent didn't see this. If they had played bishop e6, I would just go after this e-pawn, and then I would be winning as well. So that makes sense. My opponent missed bishop g6. This is a hard move to find, honestly. Classical game, probably somebody my level should find it. But in a blitz game, I don't know if you're thinking about winning your opponent's pawns on the other side. I think you're just thinking about trying to minimize the damage that they can do. So my opponent plays king h5, h4, which, to their credit, is the same idea as bishop g6. They're going after my pawns. The issue is that I can push g3. This is the issue. That's what changes with going after the h5 pawn with the king instead of the bishop. And here, their bishop has to go back to defend, which allows me the time to push my other pawns, and the bishop is not able to defend two separate passers. And this is already GG's. For clean conversion, whenever there's a passed pawn and you have a queen, you don't want to allow that pawn to promote, you can use your queen as a blockader. Step in front of the pawn is never going to promote, the king will always have squares to move to, so it's very hard to get a stalemate for white. And yeah, I just use my king to help promote another pawn, even though the bishop will give itself up, but you win a bishop this way, and then it's just a matter of promoting a second queen, and this is game. This is checkmate. It's a very interesting looking checkmate. It's almost like a checkmate sandwich. Look at this. Look at this. It looks delicious. But yeah, we got a win. We are now at 1994 elo on chess.com. And that's crazy, dude. That's actually so cool because we are one win away from the ever elusive 2000 rating mark. So hopefully that's something we hit in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And I'll see you next time. 2000 is right there. Let's get it.